So this is a little bit late with the Brooklyn Nets in terms of making a video about their future outlook. And really, I just mean late in terms of, they got swept a few days ago. It's been a bit since they got swept. And probably the shocker of the playoffs, right? Probably not really a shocker that they lose, but a shocker that they don't even win a game. This, I think what's happening with the NBA right now, and something that is actually something that I will appreciate going forward, is these super teams with a top-heavy team in terms of just one or two superstars, a lot of role players, and not a lot of really good role players. I would say for Brooklyn, they did have some poor luck throughout the season. Kevin Durant getting injured when they were the number one seed is poor luck. Kyrie Irving sitting out home games because of the mandate in New York. That's somewhat poor luck, but it's not as poor luck as the KD injury. And then they trade for Ben Simmons. Poor luck in the first place that James Harden would want out from Brooklyn. Even though I think we all kind of agree that he probably made the right decision trying to get out of Brooklyn and go somewhere where he could probably win a championship easier. And then the guy that they get back in the James Harden trade and Ben Simmons not only does not play at all during the regular season after they get him, he does not play a single game in the postseason after he says, "Oh, I'm coming back game 4." The Nets going forward now, this year, it just needs to be viewed as a wash. Because as bad as it looked in the playoffs, as bad as it looked at certain times during the regular season with both KD and Kyrie were out for a long stretch last year, or I guess this year, you could dissect it even more, and you could look at this team and say, wow, this was one of the worst situations in basketball, especially from a coaching perspective, that happened at all last year. First off, like I said, between the top 3 guys in payroll on this team now, when you look at how the season ended at the roster construction, actually the top 4 players in salary, between KD, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, and Joe Harris, it's about a combined, $130 million? 2 of those players did not play the entire season between Joe Harris and Ben Simmons. One of those guys could not play home games for the entire season, in Kyrie Irving, and another one of those guys missed about a month and a half stretch with a knee injury, in Kevin Durant. $130 million was on the bench for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, it gets even worse because not only was there $130 million sitting on the bench last year, $100 million of that is on your payroll for next year as well, between KD, Ben Simmons, and Joe Harris. Now, the Joe Harris thing makes it really difficult because there's guys like Seth Curry, who is going to have his contract up after next season. Patty Mills has a player option next season as well, which I think he would pick up. I mean, $6 million for Patty Mills, that seems like a good deal. Nick Claxton is a restricted free agent. If they just let Nick Claxton go, that's going to be a terrible decision, especially seeing as that they won't have Andre Drummond back next year, and Day'Ron Sharpe ends up being the only center on the roster next year. And all of that is being said, we don't know what's going to happen with Kyrie. 30-year-old Kyrie, a basically $37 million player option for next year. As much shit as we give players for not picking up player options, if it's really, good for them, a $37 million price tag, Kyrie Irving could probably get a contract extension either from the Nets or from somebody else of $40 to $45 million a year. He just could. Now, I don't know if Kyrie Irving is back with the next year, it's going to take a lot of finessing to be able to pull that off because, like I said, already $100 million is tied up between 3 players. Now, the other question is it even worth it? Is it even worth it if you're the Brooklyn Nets? Because what you saw in the playoffs is you put your entire faith in 2 players. You put your entire playoff hopes and your chances of a championship on 2 guys' shoulders. You put it on KD's shoulders and you put it on Kyrie's shoulders. And not only did Kyrie play really well in game 1, they still lost. Not only did KD struggle pretty much the entire series, they got swept. Not only did the Brooklyn Nets lose every single game, they didn't even get a chance to look at Ben Simmons, who was supposed to be the key player to a possible Brooklyn Nets finals run. And, like, if you're just looking at it from a general manager's perspective, if I'm looking at this and I see that Kyrie Irving declines his player option for next year, I am not calling that motherfucker. I'm not calling his agent. I'm not calling him. I'm not calling anyone close. I'm not even calling Kevin Durant. I'm calling nobody close to that situation. Because if Kyrie just leaves, that is 100% a good option for your franchise. It is. Kyrie Irving is deservedly should be on the NBA all-time 75 list. I say that. But he does not have a game that matches well with Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant at this point in his career, based off what we saw in the Boston series, might not be the Kevin Durant that we saw of old. And, I mean, he's getting to that age. He's getting to that age where it's like, okay, it's old Kevin Durant now. And he's still going to put up 25 plus every single game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that people are just going to lock up Kevin Durant now. What I'm telling you is it's not as efficient as it was in years prior, even just compared to last year. Kevin Durant was going for 50 a game damn near against the defending champions. So at this point, it's like, okay, we could bring Kyrie back for 40 to 45 plus million. And we could have almost $100 million tied up between him and Kevin Durant. Throw in the fact that we're going to pay Ben Simmons $38 million. Throw in the fact that we're going to pay Joe Harris $19 million. Still have Seth Curry on the books for $8.5 million. And after that, we will have no money to sign anybody. We won't have a single center. We won't have a single power forward. We won't have anybody. Even if Kyrie Irving comes back next year, the Brooklyn Nets will have 8 players under contract. 8. 8 players for $154 million. And that's if Kyrie Irving accepts the player option at about $10 to $15 million less than what he would be paid with a contract extension. It's such a shitty situation for the Brooklyn Nets, and I would not envy anybody that is a fan of the Brooklyn Nets, that is a front office executive for the Brooklyn Nets. I do not envy Steve Nash at all, because this job right now is going to be the most difficult offseason job. If they can somehow finesse and finagle their way back into the playoffs next year even, or through the first round of the playoffs next year, then like this offseason will have proved to be an incredibly like superhero-like effort by that front office, because there's like no hope at the end. There's no light at the end of the tunnel for this team. They are in such a cap hell that honestly at this point, if I'm the GM for the Brooklyn Nets, I'm exploring trade offers for Kevin Durant. I'm exploring trade offers for Ben Simmons. I'm exploring trade offers for Joe Harris, because whether you get draft picks, whether you get players, whether you get anything out of any of these guys, you have to do it. Because like I said, 150, they're already over the cap limit with 8 players under contract next year. I think they're like $30 million over the cap. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know I don't know if trading Kevin Durant would be the most scrutinized move in NBA history because it's Kevin Durant. But I mean, like, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, wow, we put all our faith into two guys. We let two guys run our franchise. We let a guy in Kyrie Irving who asked his way out of Cleveland because he couldn't deal with playing with LeBron. He flamed out in Boston because he could not handle the fact that he was signed to be the championship piece with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And he couldn't handle the fact that young guys like Terry Rozier and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were taking over as being the guys on that Boston Celtics team. And when he got to Brooklyn, he couldn't handle the fact that he was brought there to be the missing piece next to Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant made the Brooklyn Nets get Kyrie Irving. He made them get Kyrie Irving. You cannot tell me any different. And at this point, the Brooklyn Nets need to look at themselves and say, okay, it's time for us to take over. This is our fucking roster. This is our team. This is our arena. This is ours. This is not Kevin Durant's team. He does not own this team. He does not run this team. He does not coach this team. He doesn't even train this team. This is our team. And at this point, we need to cut ties with everybody who's trying to take over the team as their own. And that, at this point, includes a 35-year-old, almost 35-year-old Kevin Durant, who looks to be at the end of his peak of his powers.